What do you say? What do you do? We come in, and what do we say? No, that's not exactly what you say. What do you usually say? Yes, or let's talk specifically about washing the next car. What would you say? Right.
We'd like to offer to wash the next car.
Well, we'd like to offer is too wordy because by saying it, you're offering. You see what we said? Okay. Could we wash Link's car? Anyone can ask if they can wash Link's car. You follow that? Because that's what you're doing. You're asking if you can wash Link's car. Let me show you all the things that are wrong with this. If I were a human reading this, first of all, it says anyone can check with Links to see if their car can be washed. That could mean, if I want to be literal about it, it means that Habody could check with Links to see if his car could be washed. Right? That's one thing that could mean. Habody could check to see if his car could be washed. And if it can be washed, that might mean that it has cosmoline all over it or something. There's some reason it can't be washed. Do you see what I'm saying? Your choice of words are sloppy. They just don't, they're just taking for granted that everybody knows your lingo. And what we want you to do in preparing procedures is to take for granted that no one knows your lingo. In other words, don't let lingo into the picture. Now, we may restrict these procedure writings to only certain ones who have really maybe had some experience, or whose vehicles might have had some experience in making words or choosing words that would actually apply to the circumstance instead of just a casual approach to words like this is. You want to, are there some other real goodies?
I think just, I don't know how
they're all similar,
but I think all of these could just about be worded better. Like the fruit guidelines, consuming guidelines, fruit. Use older fruit first, unless new fruit is so ripe it should be used first. Now, it's okay, but the way it's worded isn't computer talk words. You know what I mean? How could that have been worded?
Well, maybe it could be categorized by saying fruit, one, and another one, use old fruit first. And then you take that number two, or you say, well, you could say the first choice is use old fruit first. Second choice.
Or if you're listening at one, no, you're right the first time. Use old fruit first. That's more concise. Because, and then second, unless new fruit is riper than that.
And that way
it just sounds better.
You've got, it's got to be to the point. No excess words and just clear and to the point. In other words, if you can read it, you ought to see if you can read it and twist the thought. Try to twist the thought. Try to make it say something else. If you can twist it, it's worded wrong. Okay? Because we find you all twist. We know that you don't ever intentionally do it, but you twist our instructions all the time. Usually when they become a little stale. Like stale meaning, we might give them to someone and they have the right meaning and they even interpret the right meaning when we give it to them. They come back and read it sometime later and it has a different meaning. It's applied differently. It's applied more generally. It's not applied in the circumstance that was really seen. Therefore, you have to put in your procedure, if you're going to put it in the computer, you've got to see the circumstance in which that would apply. That has to be written that way. So it wouldn't be something that would apply if that circumstance wasn't the same. Does that make sense to you all? So really, and this is hard. This is very hard for you, mentally. And we know it's hard, but it's a good exercise for you. It's the same thing that we said in sending out these thoughts on your list for my task. If you send out vague wording and sloppy wording, then they're going to get it just that way. We couldn't count the thousands of times in the New Testament, the Old Testament too, where the writers took things for granted, and it was so sloppy that you can have 16 churches lined up in a row giving the same sentence, and they all have an absolute idea of what that meant, and they're all different. Now, if it had really been written right, thoroughly but still concise, showing when it would apply and how it would apply, you wouldn't have 16 different opinions, maybe only 3. You see what I'm saying? You still have 3 because no matter how concise they write it, you still have those who are reading it whose computers' minds and brains aren't clearly enough defined to know how to interpret things, even if they're right. In other words, it has to be not only right on paper, it's got to be a right machinery reading it if they expect to get a right performance out of it. So it's a conduct of accuracy that you're trying to develop not only in your transmission, but in your reception. Okay? In your brain as you read something, in your brain as you present something. Has to work both ways. And we really want to upgrade it because it's time that we try to help the world become a little bit more accurate. T and I, because of our the level that we talk on with you all, we find frequently that if we try to say something as clearly as we can say it, as we're out in the world on tasks to humans, frequently they will take it completely. They take not what we say, but they take that like they would say that under certain circumstances. So they think that we are like they, who would say that under the circumstances that they would say it. We're saying it just for what it is. But they never say things, or they seldom say things just bluntly for what it is. Do you understand? They do it with little nuances, little reasons, little coloration, the hidden motivation. In other words, if you say, I don't like so-and-so, they've got their reasons of why you would say, I don't like it, and it would match what they would feel when they said they didn't like it. But it doesn't jive if that means that's why we don't like it. But they would assume that that's why we don't like it. You see what I'm saying? Like, we went someplace and this woman just surprised us and wanted to take our picture. And we said, oh no, we don't want our picture taken. And so she assumed that we didn't want our picture taken because some religious belief that didn't want our picture taken. Because this woman was from Guam, who some feel like images on pictures are against their religion, which there's a lot of truth to, because poor imagery gets you in a lot of trouble, or bad imagery gets you in a lot of trouble. I'm just using that as an example of how people always interpret your actions by the way they would feel in that circumstance. So you're trying to take all this into account as you write things and make them as clear as you can and to the point and trying to cover your bets. You'll never be able to cover 100%, but as much as you can.
I think you all should go over all of these, like even if the AC is needed during downtime, construct the setting at 72 degrees. If this isn't comfortable, to move it down gradually to as low as 68. You know what we're talking about. So you all take these if you want to back, and you all can work on them here if you want to, and see how you can make it more talk, some more kind of talk that we're looking for.
Shall I talk about these a minute? Or do you want to
The other
talk about
day,
these?
we went in,
Go ahead.
T and Doe went into a health food store. And I didn't hear this. If I had, I probably would have seen it. But the lady told Doe, said that was such a nice article about you all in the paper this morning.
And got such good pictures.
And
Such good pictures.
And it turned out that somebody looked like us. And Sabelle just walked on very calmly. And then later he came back and he said, what was the article about? And she said, what about the Heritage Society?
The Heritage Foundation and the restoration project that you and your wife are doing. And, but in other words, when we went in, she was a little shy about it because she didn't know our names and she didn't know how we would respond. And that shyness, of course, transmitted all kinds of strange feelings to us because she said, oh, that was such a nice article and pictures on the front of the section in the Dallas Morning News of you and your wife. And I went right on. I didn't say a thing. I just went right past her. Then I came back and I said, are you sure it was us? And she said, oh, yes. And then I said, well, what was the article about? And that's when she said, well, it was about this heritage restoration on these buildings that you and your wife were doing in Las Vegas.
And she thought our names were something else, and then she thought we were being
And then
modest.
she thought we were denying it because we wanted to be modest, or we wanted to be, well, what is it? We wanted to be anonymity, anonymous. And so I'm not sure she ever believed that we weren't those people. But boy, you wanted to talk about sending us through the
I didn't know about it until we got out. And I was very bad to test.
I passed out on the way to the car. Okay, let's talk about these lists that you've made. We told the Kraft, and maybe told you all too, that the most recent lists that we've gotten are 100% better than the first ones, even though there's still some things about them that need to be corrected. Some of you still make them. Let me see if I can show you a couple of examples. I want to find Sorovi's here. I can't find it because he made a couple of mistakes. Do you remember what yours was? One that you made a little quote. And what was that quote? Yeah, this is one of Sorority's programs. Can you believe it? No, I'm playing with him, but a soft word turns its way right. Did he get that from me? Did he get that from our teaching? No, he thinks he might have gotten that idea, but he's turned it to some little slogan that humans have come up with.
Sorority's not by itself.
No, I'm just taking that as an example. He also said that I'm not going to be influenced by astrological influences. I'm not going to be affected by astrological influences. Well, never mind. You don't have to give it literally. But we don't want you thinking on that level. In fact, you shouldn't even be thinking about that. Are still having thoughts of being affected by astrological.
Because you're not affected.
In other words, astrological influences aren't really what we call astrological influences. Therefore, if you're going to think of not being affected by astrological influences, that means you don't understand the fallacy of astrological influences. In other words, we know that it's the genes that are affected, and that astrology was an attempt to explain how people of different genetic structures also seem to have common characteristics of conduct as the heavens change positions. But those aren't astrological influences. And so you don't know what astrological influences are. But if you send, we know that they aren't accurate. We know that they aren't real. And you should know by now that they aren't real. So if you use the lingo of astrological influences, it would be to encourage those who would pick on such a thought to think that the idea of astrological influences was an accurate idea, even though you're saying I'm not going to be affected by it. You see what we're saying? You understand that? So you shouldn't talk about astrological influences, because that whole idea is a fallacy to begin with. They don't know how to. We can't even accurately tell you how the heavens, as they move, and we have noticed certain common characters, but they aren't even accurate. We know that the interpretations, that there's probably less than 50% of the things that are supposed to be characteristics of sun signs and things that happen as planets move in their positions and houses and all, but less than 50% of that is accurate. Not that the heavens aren't accurate, but human has never been able to keep up with the changes of those things as they occur. And to be using these methods and these interpretations of those things that have been distorted and changed through the years and probably weren't very accurate even to begin with, and certainly not any more accurate today. So we wouldn't talk about that any more than I would say in a statement, I'm not going to be influenced by Tolstoy.
Who?
Tolstoy.
Oh.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Fertilizer.
Yes.
That the farmer puts on his garden.
Do you all follow that? Because Tolstoy didn't know that much. Do you see what I'm saying? What are you doing as a student of ours if you're still a student of Tolstoy? Or the vehicle, not you. And another thing that you are doing wrong in these is that you'll slip back and forth. I noticed in one of the devotees, one thing on her list, she would say, I'm not going to permit this vehicle to do so-and-so and so-and-so. The next one she'd say, I'm not going to do so-and-so and so-and-so, as if she were the vehicle. Mistake. You have got to have vehicle in there. You've got to separate you from that vehicle in every single item on that list.
Can I ask a question about that?
Unless you're talking about the mind.
Well, that's a little confusing.
But see, your mind does not have the fallacies and weaknesses of that vehicle. Okay? Ask the question.
The only way I can think of that is find an example.
All right.
For example, if people have characteristics of maybe negative thoughts, so I wrote on here, which I'm questioning now, is I want to consciously think on the positive, feeling happy, so
Still wrong.
Right.
Still wrong. I'm not going to permit this vehicle to run any thoughts of negative, run any tapes or any thoughts of negative thinking. It's the vehicle. You aren't capable of negative thoughts.
So if I say I, it doesn't apply because my mind is already doing this.
You're not staying separated anytime you say I. It's going to help you all tremendously if you will realize that everything less than perfect conduct is characteristic of your vehicle. And the only thing that is you that I don't really know how you could put him on this list, but you have the understanding that it is you who has the rein on that vehicle. Now, the only way I could say I is I am going to keep a rein on this vehicle and not permit it to do so-and-so. You see what I'm saying? That's I. That's I. You all follow that? So don't slip in and out on these. Let me see, another example or two.
Good to read about it.
I'm not thinking about it. Yeah, don't think about it. Actually, we, in a sense, we got them on astrology a lot for all the period of time that we were thinking about it. I mean, since we were concentrating on it. Now, it didn't do them any harm, because it can be a stepping stone away from their traditional thinking that can help them start reaching out and exploring a bit. But we're past that. And even though some will still residually be picking up on those thoughts, we're past it. So we're hoping that as soon as they get past those thoughts, they'll be ready for upgrade thoughts. You follow that? Now, here's one. In response to the difficulty of feeling sorry for self, I will not spend my... No, I'm sorry, let me start over. Spending energy. And the program is, I'm going to build a force to grow stronger. That doesn't say anything. I'm going to build a force to grow stronger. That doesn't say anything. It's the same thing we were talking about on these instructions. What you write as a program has to clearly say something. If it is questionable as to what it says, or if it's vague, that kind of thought, that's kind of like an emotional expression. That's not a clear, intelligent thought. Do you follow what we're saying? You've got to be right down to the nitty-gritty. I'm not going to permit this vehicle to do thus and so, or to think thus and so, or to see thus and so, or to respond so and so, or to be slow, or to be lazy, or to just that concrete. It has to be just that concrete.
In answer to your civility, since we want to have people more aware of their genes, the genes are the ones that could be used in place of astrological.
Yes, and you can talk about genes in me, because that's the
keep
level
their
we're
genes,
on.
under control. You know, anything that I'm not going to allow my genes to influence me
Right.
under certain circumstances. In other words, you have to be precise.
This
That's
is
what-
good.
At what you want to have it, have your genes to respond to, because actually, even if we were using the astrological influences, what about the good influences? You don't want to be affected by the influences? Huh?
Matter of thinking. So it's trying to, I don't want to think of those things in relationship to me.
Okay, well, the thing of it is, what you want to do is just say, what you have to do is stop thinking about stuff.
I think
And,
maybe you ought to stop writing reports, astrological reports, because they're just too far, they're just way too far from being accurate. And you really can't, it's a guessing game. It's like playing a crossword puzzle that the percentages are really too poor on to be worthy of your time. There's one crazy thing about astrology, and the most accurate part of astrology is the most invalid part of astrology. Now that sounds weird, doesn't it? But probably if there's a part of astrology that that is accurate more than any other aspect of astrology, it's horary. And it has no logic to it at all. It has no basis that you can actually see how it works. You couldn't possibly figure it out intellectually. So, and it's just weird. You know, it's just like we don't understand. So,
And even still, it's not 100%.
oh no.
It's far from being
Oh yes, it's very inaccurate, but it's strange. It's just like, but we don't want to think about things like that because they're so inaccurate.
What I think it does, if I can interrupt you there, I think it makes a suggestion to a person, and it opens the door to a remembrance or something, or it sounds right or something, and then they make it happen. But getting back to the genes thing, what happens to me if something comes up that I don't want to think about, I don't want to think about it. I'm not going to think about such and such, whatever it is. in a sense, I make it very simple. I'm not going to allow my vehicle to respond in this way.
Or my genes, as you put it, because
Or
that's
my
another good
genes,
synonym.
You know, I'm not going to.
Or these genes that have this characteristic are not going to be permitted to express themselves in that primitive way.
But I don't say I'm not going to see any fault in somebody else until I remove the log in my own eye or something like that.
Yeah,
No,
philosophical trash.
We don't want you thinking in terms like that because that's unreal.
That's the way they're thinking. We're trying to get them to stop.
We want you all to bring them up to a higher level of thinking. In other words, we want them to be more real. Now remember, the seed that we're planting now is just a little tiny bit of seed. And I say seed, but the little seed we're planting is just a little bitty one. And it'll take a long time for it to grow. It might take 1,000 years, we don't know. But, and it may only take a few months. We don't know how things are accelerated. So, you want to say things in simple terms, so that it will come across people, because most everybody is very simple-minded. They have developed little characteristics to make them think that they're more intelligent.
They think intelligence is becoming elaborate with words, that you're more intelligent if you become elaborate with words and you've got more adjectives and more...
They could sit up there like a buffet, you know, just like puckered up
and you get further from the truth. You get further from the truth, the more elaborate you become in your thinking and interpretation. The intelligent, the really intelligent, is the simple, clear, advanced, accurate thinking. That's why when T said you throw the word genes in, it's a very advanced thinking. To throw uncivilized in, or this vehicle's going to become more civilized and do this. That's advanced thinking, because they still think, but to say I'm not going to do this wrong thing, you're talking on a moral level. And that's not where I'm not going to have these lower thoughts. That's on a moral
What lower thought?
level.
You know,
see what
different
I'm saying?
levels.
Do you all understand what we're talking about? Because those are primitive thoughts. They're uncivilized thoughts. They are, I can't think of better terms than those. So try to bring your expression as far, let it catch up with where our thinking now is. In thinking of genes, being civilized, being advanced, not being religious, not being spiritual, not being moral. It's like God is good. God is not good, clasp hands, sweet, that kind of syrup good. God is good. He's a good gardener. He's a productive gardener. He knows how to design machinery that comes out refined. And so the goodness, as humans know the goodness, is more related to sweetness, almost, than it is with the product being of quality. And the goodness we're talking about is refinement, quality, perfection, extremely civilized, extremely alert, extremely desiring to be 100% productive and having no interference from primitive characteristics of laziness or agitation or being sidetracked. Or do you follow that? So let your terminology be that way in the day. Now, if you don't send us a list every other day, or every third day, if you send us a list, then and you see changes in it, write yourself some notes, and maybe send us a list 2 or 3 weeks or a month from now if you have really upgraded your list. consider it. You see what we're saying? But don't, each time you get an item, like we've got some of these, a person will want to add an item to their list, and they send that one item. And then a day or two later they send another item that they forgot about. Let's hold off on that, and let's just say that you wouldn't send a new list more frequently than 3 or 4 weeks.
What
Okay?
you want to do is you go each day through the day, you want to be aware of what you are affected by and how you correct it. Because we want you to look at yourself like you would look under a microscope, so to speak. See yourself as though you were looking at yourself from a distance and seeing all the little things that you're doing that need to be corrected. And in the process of your doing this during the days, and of course you are sending it out to the humans at the same time. But just don't make your list and that's the end of it. It doesn't do a bit of good if you don't practice it during the day, because it's how often that you send these thoughts out to correct it that determines how we're helping everybody and how fast our work can progress. And this brings us up to something else. And it's, we both feel like you all have been doing your tasks fairly well, or we wouldn't be getting ready to do this next thing. But we have become very much aware that there are areas that are more let's see, how can I say it, more where the transmission seems to be better, to put it that way, okay? Meaning that with very little effort on Lee's part, we can usually accomplish a whole lot. And so
It's almost as if some areas, it's like you have a radio, you've got an old radio, and in some areas all the channels are static. And in some areas you might have 1 or 2 clear channels, but they don't have programming but an hour a day. Now that's true. And some areas are almost like that. You're just waiting. They may have 1 or 2 real good programs a week. You follow that? And the rest of the time you're just waiting for Thursday or Monday, 7 p.m. or whatever it is. It's such a long wait between good programs. And since all you want to do is hear good programs. You follow that? And it's true that areas have this feel to us. We can't explain it in some terms because you will misunderstand. And what even we're going to say to you the whole picture might change a short time, so we don't want to make the mistake that we have made of having you interpret it in a way that this is it, because we don't ever know why we do what we do.
We know the transmission can change. We know it's happening now, where it's a good transmission or receiver or whatever you want to call it. But we're going to ask you all to do a little bit of investigating for us. We're doing our share, and we want you all to do your share. And we're thinking about, like Joe said, like I said a moment ago, we're investigating. And we're thinking about moving the cracks. Okay? Now, probably picking up on it, okay? Now, you for a computer program, I don't know what you're doing. But where we plan to go, and we're doing it differently this time than we ever have before.
Now listen very
carefully. We're going
carefully.
to tell you where we're going to go.
We haven't told you before.
We've never done this before. And so it's quite obvious that you have grown to be more awake than than ever before, okay? And you should take this as a great compliment, I feel like. And, but anyway, we're going to try and see if the doors will open up for us in Houston.
For everybody.
For everybody, okay? And we took a short trip there just the past couple of days, and we tried our best to discount it. We tried every way that we could. And
We're still trying.
And we're still trying. And we just can't do it right now. Now, whether or not the doors will open for us, that we can't control. It is, we don't have that ability. So what we want you all to do is we brought some newspapers, and we want you all to check through them. They're a couple of days old, but you can get an idea of what's on hand, and we're going to try and get more newspapers for you all, so that you'll have them regularly.
And we'll try to get a couple of yellow pages, too, because you could see a lot in yellow pages.
And we really hate to do this to you all, but we feel like if it's the way we think it is, the work that you all do will be amplified 100 times over. And that might be a slight exaggeration. But our desire is to speed everything up right. We hope that's your desire also. And so therefore we just feel like that even though T&O, and we're talking about even move and retreat, which we love to move so much. We can't even get out of that. So,
tried every way to
that
figure
you
out
all are
how
going
to
to be
avoid
put in. So it's something where it's like we're going to consolidate all our forces at once. In other words, links will be in the same town with you. And we feel like it may be a big push, it may not be anything. But we're doing what we feel like we're supposed to be doing.
There's something to be gained from it. Like take our move to Squaw Pass. Do any of you ever think that was a mistake? Have any of you ever thought of what all the positive reasons for that might have been? Have you ever just thought about it? Because I could give you a long list of what the positives are, but it might be that you should think about why we were to do that, go there and be there such a short time, and what effect it might have, what might be the lessons that it might not have only taught us, but also the signals we might have sent out by doing what we did. Because everything that we do sends out signals. In other words, it's twofold. We always learn lessons by it, experiences by it, positives by it, plus a lot of times we think we do something merely because of the signal that's to be sent out, but we're never aware of that till it's over. Do you follow that? Now, but what's hard for us is this retreat is so pleasant. Links craft is pleasant. There's not a thing forcing us out of here. There's nothing in this town that is forcing us away from here. You're actually not being forced out of Austin because people have come in and disrupted your tasks, and you're not being forced. And so we kept thinking, why are we rocking the boat when the boat seems to be okay? Now, and realize also that if this does happen, and if it is extremely accelerating, isn't accelerating still? Don't we want to accomplish our task with speed? Okay. Now, accelerating is not always easy to take. I mean, strong fertilizer burns sometimes. So we've got to be prepared that we will take the experience and not let it weaken us. Whatever we experience in this, we will not let it weaken us. We will only let it be a tool to strengthen us and to move us forward. whether we do nothing but investigate it, and it causes certain things to happen by our investigating it, or we actually move there, or we move there and leave there a month later or a week later. We don't really care. What we do care is to do a good job of whatever it is that we do, and to learn from it in a positive way, what we can learn from experience. Now, we want to make a very deep impression on you, not to give notice at any out-of-craft test. No slightest hint. Don't even start relaxing at your task, thinking, well, at least I'm not going to be here long, and so I don't really need to worry about it, and sort of letting it deteriorate. You go ahead at your out-of-craft task just as faithfully, if not more faithfully, than before, and in ways that you can prepare that task without anyone knowing it, so that others could slip into it, would be to your advantage. But do not let the cat out of the bag at all. Don't even think that way.
Now, what we feel like you can do, we feel like you can use your references, this job as
This is
reference.
the change.
Okay?
You understand that?
This
For the
job
first
is
time
new.
ever, we're going to let you use your present tasks, if you want to, as job references.
Of course, those at computer craft, or whatever it is, we don't know how well they're built towards you, but it might be that you can be transferred. You know, if you can create something in this new place where you could be of more advantage, then, in other words, it's your strategy to figure out how you can do it.
In the best way for everybody, best way for your employer.
To their advantage.
Yes, we want it to be to their advantage as well, if possible. So we really want you to think about your strategy and see it like I wish there was ideally, like T mentioned, computer craft. I wish there was some ideal way that they thought that by your going there you could be doing them a favor as well. I don't know how that could be worked. And you might have to make some, we don't want to use the sickness routine of Mama. It might be that Mama's gotten so well that she's moved by the sea.
She's bought a new place down by the Gulf.
And we want to be close to her, but we don't want sympathy and flowers and, okay? But we're not telling you the strategy. We want you to think about the strategy.
It's okay to use Mama if she's improving. You know, like this area, like Joe said, has some nice Scuff area, not beach homes, even though a lot of them were blown away. But they have some new ones there, you know.
They're busy.
And a lot of condos, so you can say something about new condos, one new condo that you all can use now. You've got to, with Derody now, I don't know if you're related to them or not, are you, Derody?
In the church.
Okay, somehow or another you're going to be adopted or something, I don't know, but it's going to be fun to figure out the strategies that you all can use.
And we might plan a strategy so that it happens over a month or
This
two.
is going to happen immediately, okay? You'll be able to get notice, you'll be able to stay long enough to train some. Okay?
This is why we said earlier that if Sawyoti can just kind of keep from rocking the boat, in other words, we don't want him to take a new task where they put even more responsibility on him and expect him to follow through on that new task. But it's up to him to decide what to do, knowing what we've now given you. I mean, or what would rock the boat at least. Okay? And so, also, I don't know if in the little bit of time that you've gone to Houston on retreats and have gone to movie tasks and things of that sort, if you look at these jobs and you're wondering where your location might be,
The sightseeing,
the wind.
It'll be on tape too.
Yes, it'll be on tape. But from downtown west to, we'll try to set the boundary as West Belt. In other words, downtown to West Belt will be the east-west boundaries of Texas. And
I remember where West Belt was.
you all went to movies out there, Town and Country 6. So that was West Belt. Huh? Yes, it's quite a ways out. But from downtown to West Belt would be the east-west boundaries. And from Katy Freeway, or I-10, to Bel Air Boulevard would be north-south boundaries.
Yeah,
You all
there
understand that? Now, and that takes in a pretty large area. That takes in about an area the size of Austin. You
In
know,
other words, we don't want you going out to Kings.
there's Kingswood is an
and
area about 35
Champion
miles this
Forest.
side of town, and Champions is another one north west of town, about 20. Those are all suburbs of town, and they're new and they're active, and there might be a lot of job opportunities there. So as you see job opportunities, you want to try to get some kind of. I'll tell you what, T, before we leave, maybe we could pass them on a map.
Right,
And,
so how about
and the
Conroe,
yellow
Fort
pages.
Conroe and all that?
Well, see,
Did
that's
you all go to it? Didn't Arthody go out to a meeting way out Conroe, toward Conroe?
yes, it was. It was out in the Champions area.
Is that
Right,
right?
right.
That's too far out.
What's that? That's where given you is probably I don't know, 15 miles east to west and maybe 10 miles north to south. I don't know. It's pretty good scope. It may not be quite that far, but it's a nice big area that covers a very active area business-wise. It could even take in downtown. Wouldn't be. There might even be a possibility that might have some in the medical center. I don't know, but the medical center is kind of in a straight line with downtown and Bel Air Boulevard, so it still would be within range. But there are also numerous hospitals and complexes very close range. In other words, if you took that square we gave you and kind of put a focal point just west of let's say at about San Felipe and Chimney Rock as maybe central to that area.
We'll go to local with that.
That doesn't mean we have found any cracks in that area, but that would be an area that would be very central. And there are hospitals all around there. There are computer stores just everywhere. There are office complexes of every sort, just by the dozens.
Are y'all ready for this?
I wasn't sure.
Just one moment, Libba. And also, I don't know if you like your work at La Quinta, but I'm just using this as an example. If you do, it might be that you could
They have La
transfer
Quinta.
to La Quinta there, you know, if you liked it.
And this
In other words, I'm
is
just mentioning that as a
inside
possibility.
It works for the change.
I wasn't sure if I should be thinking in terms of using Austin as a reference or not.
Because of the
They
family
know Dr.
connection.
Erskine, and then they know where I am
Well, see,
now.
you might be the exception to the rule there. In other words, the doctor that you worked prior to now.
Right.
But do the doctors where you now work, do the doctors where you did work, would they send people to where you now work?
Well, it's forwarded mail, so that means.
That they know where you are.
Yeah.
So if somebody called their office, they would say you're at such and such, and they would call there. You might be the exception in this reference capacity. But we also might figure out a way to do it without leaving the trail.
I don't know that they think that she's still in the group, do they?
Well, they don't.
See, I don't know that
Oh, well, then that may be the thing to not have to worry about. So that you might be perfectly okay to use.
Because
You
we're
haven't
the
sent
dropout.
them. They don't get newsletter. They don't even think you're with. What's wrong with it?
I don't think there's anything wrong.
There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it.
And Pip Odie didn't know where you worked, right? No, I don't think you were working at the time. No.
But see, but you can gain some strength by that, everybody. You can gain some strength by that. Just don't worry about it.
No, sorry.
Trying to figure out my business side. I talk to a lot of different people in the country. They interrelate. Amarillo knows where I am now because of that. Right?
I don't know how we can avoid
I
it.
don't think that we have
Just
to
don't
worry
think we
about it.
have to worry about it.
If anything's brought up about you being in a group, you can say that you all work together on a research project way back in Amarillo, that you've all become good friends. You live together so closely and work together.
Well, if you want to call a marketing research group a call, you can sure do.
You see what we're saying, but it's no longer exists. But you still have friends who, that you are still close to, and they'll probably be your friends for the rest of your life. But we're not a group, we're just friends any more than your friends. You and your friends are a group,
As far as we can tell, we don't see any connection with that we're aware of with those places of employment with any trouble.
The only reason it's coming to mind because I noticed that individual, Joe Don, contacted me. He hasn't called me back yet. I have a little time. And I thought I was running across the line.
It wouldn't concern yourself with that. That human state is going to do something they don't do.
He might do it later on.
Yeah, there's no telling. And
He might have done.
Also, Pip Odie, as far as we're aware, had caused us no difficulty. He didn't even let his mother know that he was no longer with the group. And he led them to believe that he is employed in Alabama and is actually employed in Oklahoma. So it doesn't sound like he's going to cause us any or let out the bag of things that would be a link to where we are. Now, we don't know what we have to deal with in some of the others, but we're not aware of any difficulty. We've kept we've tried to keep a fairly good contact with areas that might be suspicious of causing us some interruption. And we may be blinded at it, but as long as we do our homework and try to do it, that's all we can do. And we aren't aware of anybody. Actually, it appears to be, but knock on wood and hope for the best, it appears that we're in less possible jeopardy now than we ever have been, as far as feelings from family members and so forth.
When you were talking about moving, and you said into the Houston area because it will be more magnified, meaning the Houston area is like also magnified, like Boston.
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh, I didn't let T finish what she was saying, but our experience has been that we feel like our radio, when we're in that area, has a lot of good stations, and that we feel like we don't have to wait so long for programs or answers, and the transmission is also good there. Certain types of transmission, and but that's not to set you up, because, like we said, we're completely prepared that this may be a short-lived thing, may not even happen. But we were just trying to second guess why it is that we feel to go through
Not
with
even be bad at all.
this. We're not going through with this. Let's put it this way. We're not going through with this because of that.
Right.
Okay? We're investigating this because we got instruction to investigate. And T and Doe always try to figure out why in the world are we investigating
Why
this?
are we
We try to justify it. Liberty?
The first night we drove into Dallas, I just had a feeling that this was just temporary.
Yeah, I know.
And it was just like something was missing.
Well, see, your mind may know that. We did too. T and I did too. When we came in here, we thought, what are we doing here? When we first drove in, and we thought, well, why are you having thoughts like that? You know, you've got pleasant quarters, and we fought them off, but I say we waited so long for a good program to come out. No, I'm teasing you, but we have fought that off ever since we have been here, and we even said, this isn't another Fort Worth experience, even though we learned a lot. We learned a lot from that Fort Worth experience. Dorothy, I don't think you were with us. Well, we went to Fort Worth one time in about a month. And then just
well enough to get everybody in a job, pay for guys. Just about like now, you know.
just about the same thing.
But it's, we, like Joe said, we try to figure out the reason. You know, if that's the vehicle, still probably the programming in the genes or something, even though we never want to do something impulsively. We check it out, check it and recheck, and make sure that what we're supposed to do is what the next level wants us to do and not what our genes want us to do. Of course, if it was my genes, I don't think I would ever move. You know?
And look at this. Link's vehicles and genes don't like what we have to deal with by going there. I mean, that has no fond memories. It has only vehicular trouble in that area. And even though we recognize that when we were beginning to awaken, that we had an awfully good connection with our minds, even though we've had to fight the vehicles a lot there because they act up just like yours would act up if you went to some town that you spent most of your life in, and you have to stop tapes constantly that one say, oh, I remember when you know, and you know how the brain wants to do that. So
well, everything that you hear on television, you can relate to just about. You know, the vehicle. And you just have to sit there with kind of a blank look on your face, you know, and hope that you can stop everything from going any further.
And it'll be a nice chore for Lynx to keep their tape button pressed 24 hours a day on tapes that would like to play if it let them. Now, and they aren't pleasant tapes either, you know, because of the experiences in our awakening of having to leave there. A thing I was about to overlook, when you're looking for tasks, when you're investigating tasks, we have said that if there's something in the newspaper and ads that seems right and seems like an opening that might be right down your alley and might be within the guidelines, that would be, that the newspaper ad would be a thing that you would follow. But we've also said that newspaper ads are not the only thing that you follow. If you go to the ads and there's nothing that seems to be within the guidelines or down your alley of pursuits. This is the reason that we're giving you yellow pages and so forth. Like sometimes, every time you have to look for tasks, we find certain individuals who limit themselves too much to the newspaper ads. We find other individuals who will go look for a task from something from the yellow pages when the very one they were looking for was listed in ads, and they didn't pay attention to the ads. And they wasted days and days and days because they were looking outside of the ads. So let's use the tool of the ads, but then not limit ourselves to that. Okay? as you hunt for things or think for things.
Now, another thing, what we'll do is, if, since Austin isn't too far from Houston, as soon as we get several individuals, say, 6,
Probably.
who might set up some appointments together, where the time, like, let's say that,
Interviews.
Interviews in Houston, you all can figure out what days that you can set up appointments, and maybe let you all just drive down for the day and have your appointments and then come back that night.
I'm going to
Or
say that
let's-
again. In other words, you're going to plan your strategy that when it gets down to your investigating a task to the point of where you might be able to make an appointment for an interview, then you're going to try to take your craft into consideration and see if there are others who are possibly that close to interview. If not, then you'll try to wait until there are some others so that we could send a car down for the day. Like you could leave early in the morning, and at least we'd like to have at least 4 people, no less than 4 people, going at once for interviews. Do you follow that? And then you could come back in just in time to get down that night, if it took that long to get those 4 out of the way. We'd like to have 6, if we could.
If Links is successful in getting the craft for you all, then of course we will move things there, and then you can come there, and it'll be worked out differently. But for right now, this is how we'll have to do it.
In other words, if we get something going before we get a craft and figure out a way to have a substation for you there. Do you follow that? In other words, if we don't have a substation for you, then at least you'll try to get interviews underway. But let's go back to the beginning. Nobody's going to do anything now but investigate and try to come up, right? Or can they go ahead and make some calls?
They can start already.
Okay,
I believe
then you can go ahead and make some calls if the leads seem good, and even start planning some strategy on some interviews. But we would like to keep this very organized. No notices until Links gives a clarification. No notices at all. Any questions?
If I do make some calls and I use my current job as a reference, and a place calls back and asks,
When you tell them that you haven't let the people know that you're leaving, okay?
Or you could say contact so-and-so. Yeah.
You can have sorority, so you all could use each other as references.
Are you the only one that answers a certain number?
We're the only 2 of the only 3 of them.
Okay, so you could use each other. as
Oh, you can
references.
sure use each other. And actually, I feel like on Derody that you and Pam Odie ought to hang back a little bit until Sorority and Arthody have figured out some kind of strategy here.
They get their foot in the
Because
door,
we would
you know.
really like to not leave a bad taste here.
In other words, why don't we let sorority and orthody start looking first, right?
Sure.
You get your foot in.
I have lots of questions, but I don't know.
Shall we shut this off, Chief? Okay. Bye. There's something that keeps coming into your task list that we feel like is not correct. Even though we have used this terminology, you're thinking of it wrong. And that is, we keep hearing, I want my vehicle to accept being a spoke in the wheel, or some expression similar to that. There is not a member of the next level who is a spoke in the wheel. Now, it's true that we talked to you using that terminology for a period while we wanted you to be willing to become a part of the crew without having periods of renegading from the crew. And a crew is like each of its members being a spoke in the wheel. But the way you word it in those lists of I want to be have the vehicle be willing to be a spoke in the wheel, you word it like you're sacrificing something, or you word it like you're lowering yourself. Instead of what you're doing is heightening yourself. There's nothing as in human, let's take it in purely human terms. Has an astronaut lowered himself by becoming a member of the crew of the shuttle, or has he not elevated his position of service by becoming a crew member? Now, it's true during the time that he is a crew member on the shuttle, he can't go to the bowling league, and he can't go to the bar with the boys, and he can't carry on with his mistress. He can't do those aspects of being renegade. He has to love being a part of the crew that is involved 24 hours a day for the time he's on shuttle mission in the program of the shuttle. But which is, you better get the vehicle to accept and to recognize that from your point of view, it's not lowering yourself. In other words, every member of the next level isn't only when you become a member of the next level, only when you're free of these lower characteristics are you independent. But the chief has designed it that you give up independence, or that you become independent once you no longer yearn for wild or renegade qualities. And you see how that design one can't happen without shedding the other characteristics. Even though it's true that primitive animal loves to go where he wants to, when he wants to, do what he pleases, when he wants to. He doesn't really care whether or not it is of any significance. He cares more about the liberty that he has of running wild, doing what he wants to, when he wants to. But your mind needs to work harder because your vehicle is capable, even the primitive vehicle that you're now occupying, is capable of recognizing the value of a crew membership and of a significant crew membership. And every crew membership, every person who gets to be a member of a crew is an extreme individual. It doesn't mean he has sacrificed anything. He sacrificed garbage for something significant. Do you understand that? And that's the way you need to feel about it. But it disturbs me every time I read it on somebody's list. I want to keep this vehicle willing to be a spoke in the wheel. That's really low thinking.
What they ought to say is, I want to keep the vehicle under control so that it doesn't have to be achieved. If they're going to word it that way. But really what you ought to do is say that I want to be a good crewman where I can work with my crew harmoniously.
Yes, right.
That's what your concern is. You want to even project that out into the world where humans can work together in harmony.
Right. They're not giving up anything other than a primitive nature that limits you so severely. Look at the wild animal. Because of his freedom, he can't do anything. It's only when he chooses to devote his energy to something that doesn't permit him to be wild that he becomes to have a significant role to play. But he shouldn't feel cheated from his wild kingdom ways. That means he still yearns more for just trash, for just a very insignificant way of thinking. Well, enough said on this. You all know what.
Nick Bobby has a question.
Oh,
We should turn it off.
okay.